For as long as we have been human, there has been the sky, an immense, silent canvas stretching from one horizon to the other. It has been our clock, our calendar, our compass. But it has always been more than that. It has been a source of profound mystery, a space onto which we have projected our deepest questions, our greatest hopes, and our most persistent fears. The story of unidentified aerial phenomena is not a new one. It is a narrative that unfolds across the entirety of recorded history, a continuous thread woven through the tapestry of human civilization, changing in its interpretation, but constant in its presence. Our exploration begins with a fundamental truth, not about the sky, but about ourselves. The very survival of our species depended on an ability to look up and understand what was seen. The movement of the sun, the phases of the moon, the shifting constellations that heralded the changing seasons. But this evolutionary imperative goes deeper. We are, by our very nature, wired to notice the anomalous, the thing that breaks the pattern. An unexpected light, an object moving against the grain of the celestial sphere. These are the things that capture our attention. This innate, powerful drive to find meaning in the unexpected is the lens through which every observation of the sky must be viewed. It is, at its core, a human story. To understand the earliest accounts of strange things in the sky, one must step back into a world without the frameworks of modern science. A world where the heavens were not a void of physics and chemistry, but a living realm, a direct interface with the divine. In this world, every event in the sky carried immense weight and meaning, a message to be deciphered. In the great civilizations of the ancient world, recording what happened was a sacred and official duty. Scribes in Mesopotamia, using styluses to press cuneiform into wet clay, were not poets or fantasists. They were the state's memory, its accountants, its chroniclers. When they noted fiery disks or unusual moving lights, they did so on the same tablets where they recorded grain harvests, royal decrees, and the precise timing of a lunar eclipse. These were not works of fiction, they were entries into the official record, observations deemed important enough to preserve for posterity. The sky was seen as an extension of the state, and any deviation from its normal course was a matter of profound civic importance. In Rome, historians like Livy and natural philosophers like Pliny the Elder chronicled the life of their empire with meticulous detail. When they received reports of strange phenomena, they used the vocabulary available to them. Confronted with a silent, structured object moving overhead, what language could they possibly use? They reached for the familiar. They described phantom ships, glowing shields, or other terrestrial objects because their conceptual world did not contain words for aircraft or drones. The use of these terms reveals not a literal belief in flying ships, but the struggle of a rational mind to categorize the uncategorizable. These accounts were treated with gravity, catalogued as progegia, events that broke the natural order and were therefore seen as potential omens from the gods that required careful interpretation and official ritual response. Moving forward into medieval and early modern Europe, the lens of interpretation shifts dramatically. The sky remains a place of profound meaning, but that meaning is now filtered primarily through the intense religious framework of the era. The world was perceived as a stage for a cosmic struggle between good and evil, heaven and hell, and sometimes it seemed that struggle would burst into view for all to see. Two events in particular stand out in the historical record for their astonishing detail and the sheer number of witnesses. On an April morning in 1561 over the city of Nuremberg, and again 5 years later in 1566 over Basel, hundreds of people observed something extraordinary. These were not fleeting glimpses by lone individuals. They were mass sightings, witnessed by townspeople from all walks of life, lasting for over an hour. The account from Nuremberg is particularly stunning. Witnesses described a sky filled with objects, spheres of red, blue, and black, large cylindrical shapes from which more spheres emerged, and blood-red cross-like forms. According to the broadsheet that documented the event, these objects darted about the sky, seemingly warring with one another in a chaotic, terrifying display that ended with a large black object crashing to the earth. To the 16th century mind, steeped in the language of earthly conflict and divine judgment, the interpretation was direct and visceral. This was a battle. The surviving woodcut is not symbolic fantasy. It is presented as a piece of early journalism, a literal depiction, intended to inform the public of a real occurrence they understood as a divine warning. The dawn of the 20th century brings a seismic shift in technology and worldview.
The sky is no longer the exclusive domain of birds and gods. It has been conquered by human invention. Yet this new familiarity with the air does not end the sightings of the strange. Instead, it reframes them, giving birth to a truly modern phenomenon. On June 24, 1947, a private pilot named Kenneth Arnold was flying near Mount Rainier in Washington state. He saw a string of 9 bright objects flying in formation at a speed he calculated to be far beyond any known aircraft of the time. When he landed, he described their motion to reporters. He said they flew erratically, like a saucer would if you skipped it across the water. The media, seeking a concise headline, simplified his description of the movement into a description of the object. And with that simple, catchy misinterpretation, the term flying saucer was born. Arnold's sighting opened a floodgate. It occurred in a world reeling from World War II, a world living with the terrifying new reality of the atomic bomb and the rising anxieties of the Cold War. The idea of powerful, unknown technology in the skies resonated deeply.
With sightings proliferating, especially from military personnel and pilots, the United States government began to take official notice. This was now a matter of national security. Could these objects be advanced Soviet aircraft? The initial investigations, first Project Sign, then its successor Project Grudge, operated quietly to analyze the reports. As the reports continued to mount, a more formalized, long-term study was established, Project Blue Book. For 17 years, from 1952 to 1969, Project Blue Book was the official public face of the U.S. government's study of the phenomenon. The sheer volume of its work is staggering. Over its lifetime, it collected, investigated, and analyzed 12,618 individual sighting reports. This number alone illustrates how widespread the phenomenon had become, no longer just isolated historical anecdotes, but a persistent contemporary mystery demanding systematic attention. The final conclusions of Project Blue Book were in many ways as complex as the phenomenon it studied. The vast majority of its cases were ultimately explained. They were determined to be misidentifications of conventional aircraft, weather balloons, astronomical objects like planets or bright stars, or unusual atmospheric effects. However, a small but significant percentage of cases remained officially categorized as unidentified. It's crucial to understand that this was a technical designation, not a confession. Unidentified was not a synonym for extraterrestrial. It simply meant that, after analysis, there was not enough data to reach a firm conventional conclusion. The case was, officially, unresolved. The closure of Project Blue Book in 1969 didn't end the sightings. Instead, the nature of the evidence began to change, driven by a revolution in technology. The primary witness was no longer just the fallible human eye. Now, encounters were being recorded by advanced military sensor systems, unblinking electronic eyes designed to provide objective, measurable data. This new era promised clarity, but it often delivered a more complex form of uncertainty. Radar is a foundational technology of modern defense. It operates by sending out a pulse of radio energy and then listening for the echo. By measuring the time it takes for that echo to return, the system calculates an object's distance. And by measuring the subtle shift in the echo's frequency, the Doppler effect, it can determine its speed with incredible precision. It is a way of seeing for hundreds of miles through clouds and darkness. When a radar operator detects a target moving in ways that defy known physics, it becomes a data point that demands explanation. Alongside radar, another critical sensor came into play, forward-looking infrared, or FLIR. An infrared camera does not see visible light. It sees heat. Every object with a temperature above absolute zero radiates thermal energy. A FLIR system translates this invisible world of heat into a visible image, often a grayscale picture, where hotter objects appear brighter. This allows a pilot to detect a jet engine's exhaust from miles away, or to see an object silhouetted against the cold background of the high atmosphere. Some of the most compelling modern footage of UAP has been captured by these very systems. But while these technologies are incredibly powerful, they are not infallible. The data they provide still requires careful human interpretation, and that data can be ambiguous. Atmospheric conditions, such as temperature inversions, can bend radar waves and create false returns. A system's calibration might be slightly off. On a grainy infrared display without clear points of reference, judging an object's true size or distance can be exceptionally difficult. A small nearby object can look identical to a large distant one. These sensors provide data, but they do not always provide easy answers. This new reality of sensor data led to renewed official interest. In reports released to the public in 2021 and 2023, the U.S. government took an official stance of cautious transparency. The reports confirmed that encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena by military personnel are real and are being documented. They affirmed that most of these cases, once analyzed, likely have conventional explanations. However, they also officially acknowledged that a subset of these encounters could not be explained with the available data. The language was precise. There was no confirmation of extraterrestrial technology, but there was an admission of an unresolved mystery, backed by sensor data. And so, after journeying from ancient Rome to the cockpit of a modern fighter jet, we arrive back where we began, with the human mind. The history of UAP sightings is not just a history of objects in the sky, it is a history of human perception, of interpretation, and of our ceaseless quest to impose order and meaning on the unknown. The phenomenon seems to exist at the intersection of two distinct realities. On one side, there are observable events, genuine atmospheric effects like ball lightning, misidentified conventional craft, or novel technologies like stealth aircraft and advanced drones. On the other side is the human interpretive filter. The cultural context of an era shaped the language used. High psychological stress, such as that experienced during the Cold War, can heighten our sensitivity to potential threats. And underpinning it all is our evolutionary drive to see patterns, a cognitive engine that is the source of both our greatest discoveries and our most profound biases. And observation is only the beginning. Interpretation is where the story is truly formed. We can see a consistent psychological process at work throughout history. First, there is anomaly detection. A light moves incorrectly. An object appears where it should not. Next, pattern recognition. The brain immediately tries to fit this strange data into a known category: a bird, a star, an enemy plane. When no familiar pattern fits, the mind moves to cultural framing. The Roman thinks of an omen, the Nuremberg citizen thinks of a celestial battle, the Cold War observer thinks of a secret weapon. Finally, from this frame, a narrative is created, a story that makes sense of the experience within the observer's own worldview. This leads to the central, unresolved question. The long record of these sightings is undeniable, but what does it truly signify? Is it a record of strange objects that have visited our world throughout history? Or is it a record of the human mind, grappling with phenomena that lie just beyond the edge of its understanding in any given era? Perhaps the two are not mutually exclusive, but the evidence points overwhelmingly to the latter as a powerful, shaping force. The object of observation may change. The language we use may evolve from gleaming shields to tic-tacs. The tools we use may progress from the naked eye to advanced infrared sensors, but the stage remains the same. The sky has always been and continues to be the place we look to when we confront the limits of our knowledge. It is the repository for our sense of wonder and for our anxieties about our place in the cosmos. Ultimately, the historical record of unidentified aerial phenomena does not provide definitive proof of extraterrestrial visitation. What it does provide is something just as profound: a mirror. It reflects our changing understanding of the universe, the evolution of our technology, and the enduring nature of human curiosity. It is a story of our persistent, humbling, and deeply human attempts to make sense of the unknown, an effort as old as civilization itself.